From the studios of the Bakersfield, California, it's time to open up with real people, real talk about real stuff. And now, a special welcome to our friends throughout California, across the nation, and around the world to this week's edition of Open Up.
And yes, good morning. A special welcome. Thank you so much, John, for welcoming all of our friends from all over the world. I'm Tina Miller.
And I'm John Clark, your favorite pair on the air.
Yes, we are your favorite pair on the air, and this is Open Up.
You bet. And so glad to have you. Boy, we've got a wonderful show for you.
Woo!
Do you guys like Al Pacino as an actor?
Yes!
Yeah, do you? You know, all those roles? Just when I think I'm out, they keep dragging me back in. Well, you know, we've got him here today. We really do. And you're going to meet him. And so we're really looking forward to that. But
yes,
we've also got something very serious. Have you ever known people that are hooked on drugs, young people? Have gotten drawn into that scourge. Well, we've got someone here who's a great warrior against that, who's been through it himself. You know, that's really the best way to come out of something. I've read studies that say that the most people that really get healed from the drug scourge are those who turn around and help those that are still in it. And we've got one of those today, don't we?
Yes, Don. It's the right thing to do good. And so doing good involves someone else, helping someone else. So, Don, before we introduce him, I'd like to say thank you to Nature's Fruit Market and Juice Bar, 2000 H Street. This is, Don is drinking his favorite Alibaba. Mm-hmm. And this is for anyone, everything that has vitamin C in it, it's in this drink. It's called Killer C. I don't like to use the word killer, but anyway, it's Killer C, and it's so good for you if you've got congestion or anything like that you need to get rid of. This will help it. Okay. So thank you, Wendy and Chuck, and I hope you do visit them.
Well, you know, we are so fortunate to have Wendy and Chuck Noss in our city. They are so committed to people's health and well-being and optimal living, and that's what that whole store is about.
Yes, very, very committed. So, and we have a live studio audience today.
Let's hear some applause.
Thank you all for being here. Okay, so Don, would you like to introduce our first guest?
You know, I would. This is a friend. You know, he'll have to tell me how long we go back, but it's a long ways. When I came to Bakersfield about 27 years ago, in August of 1987, in a dust storm, one of our August dust storms. Oh. And but I met a guy who's a real whirlwind for really working with young people and bringing young people out of the scourge of drugs. And he's been there himself. And we're talking about Manuel Carrizales. We're talking about Manny's kind of the spiritual mayor of Bakersfield. I mean, this is quite a guy. Manny, so good to have you.
Welcome.
We need you to sit right up. They tell us to get right into these microphones. So.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's great to see both of you.
Oh, thank you.
Take us back. First, take us back where you and I first met, and then let's go even back further into the life you were in before you and I got together.
Well, I think back in, as a child, we have opportunity to make changes, and I made changes in the wrong way. My grandma raised me. There was things that I was always trying to fill that void in my heart. Put on fast forward, I started using heroin, junior high school, and they used to bus us from Railroad to Cottonwood to Railroad, back and forth. So you would go to a junior high and see kids being dropped off, and the lunch bag and playing tetherball and that. Yet I walk into a restroom, tie myself down and shoot heroin. Junior high school. At the same time, putting the gun on top of the toilet. So my mentality was so far advanced in what I was dealing with.
Well, how old were you at that time?
I was 14.
14 years old.
But I was hanging around guys 30, 35, 40 years old. So I was being mentored by the wrong guys, in a different avenue. But the thing was, come down, I was just starving for love, broken heart. And
that was the void you were trying to fill.
Yeah. And it's funny because I'm 50 now, but all the years is like a journey. And seeing all the guys I grew up with, and I've done a lot of the funerals, and their kids or grandkids are my program. Through all that, we were always trying to we could mask it real good. And that's what's happened today with so many kids. They
Yes.
can mask their problems. They can look at you and smile, but their hearts are broken. They're starving for love.
How do you see through that?
Well, I see it because of what I went through. I mean,
Right.
when I was
Right.
15, I got busted for armed robbery, burglary, and a shootout. I was in the Bakersfield, California, back in 78, 79, because the young man going through heroin withdrawals, juvenile. So it was like the first, it was like, how is all this happening? But yet, for us, it was like, it was no big thing in the neighborhood. And, but the sad thing was at that time, no one really reached out to us. No one ever came with the message to come and tell us that Christ loved us. And being balanced, showing unconditional love, encouraging them, and telling them that Christ is the answer. But I remember when I was 15 years old, never forgot this. I came home all loaded, right, on heroin. And I put it on TV, and I hear this guy preaching, man. And he gives this quick story. He says that there was a swimmer, diver, Olympian, practicing. And as he put his arms out at night, it was a full moon, and he looked down, and he was going to do a dive. He looked, and he noticed that he could see a shadow at the bottom of the pool. As he saw that, it was a cross because he had his hands out. And he clicked that with him that you can't see a shadow on water. So that cross saved him. And when that guy gave that message, that was Billy Graham.
Really?
And when Billy Graham, when he said that, it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was a cross that saved his life. So that night I wrote a letter to him, 15 years old. And I put it away, and I woke up the next day, I was just tripping, I was loaded out, forget that. Kept it in there. Make a long story short, we would have got 25 years later, when Franklin Graham comes down in 2004. So he comes down to Bakersfield, and we work with him. We do all the high schools and do the whole thing. I said, here, my grandma gave me a letter, and I read it. It was to Billy. I said, Franklin, do me a favor. You go give this to your dad. I wrote this man almost 35 years ago.
The same letter?
Yeah. Of how, I wanted Christ, but I didn't know. That was really like,
Wow.
So Franklin gave it to him. And I got a call back from Franklin. He said, man, I just wanted you to know I gave it to my dad. And he was just saying, how you helped me here in the city do all the outreaches and do all the school assemblies.
Wow.
So it was my grandma's prayers that changed my life, and I brought that real quick.
Oh.
They put it on the front page. 4 grandmas in the neighborhood praying for 40 years for the neighborhood.
The story is about you.
No, the story is about grandma's praying.
Oh, grandma's
But she used
praying.
to pray for us, right?
Okay.
And I was like number 1 on her list, on her hit list that God would touch my life. And
God's hit list.
yeah. But it was funny because she called me up, I want you to come over, because we're on TV every day, right? And she says, I want you to come over.
Wow.
We're already in ministry. And she goes, I have something to show you. So she's making tamales and everything, right, and her friends. I sit down, they bring a table, plate for me, and then she brings that. So let me show you something. She goes, I want to show you this because you're not the only one on TV. You know what I mean? And she put me, it was funny because she goes, to humble me, you know what I mean?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And she goes, and she told me in Spanish, man, you always stay humble. This was like 24 years ago when she told me that. And that always stuck with me.
This was before you came out of the whole drug thing.
No, this was after.
Oh, after, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the thing was that, she was the one praying for me. And, I went to prison when I was 18 and back in 82 and got busted. And, there's a lady, I'll give names because it's real. Fuchsia Ward, who works at the Kern High School District, is the, oversees all the community schools, continuations. Well, when I was 17, they sent the SWAT team out there to come and get me.
Wow.
And
From school.
yeah, so they just surrounded and the helicopter, the whole thing.
Oh.
You know what I mean? It was crazy. But that's how violent I was as a kid. So I said, well, I could walk with you or I could run. I said, because I'm not really concerned about. And so I walked with her. And I shook all the sergeant's hands. Good to see all you guys, and that kind of thing, and they're looking at me like,
You're under arrest.
Yeah. So, but the sad thing was this, my dad was a custodian at Vista East. And he was sitting right there with, disappointment and disgrace in his face. And I looked at him, and, tears in his eyes.
Oh.
So that was the beginning of my journey. You know, when I got to Chino and prison, it was like an upside down world. All my dad's friends, that kind of thing, you know, embraced me, and so it took me to a whole different realm of violence.
Oh, in prison.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're going to take a break on that, and we'll come back.
You know, one thing I want to know, Benny, your grandmother said stay humble, and it's a very interesting admonition for you because you've since had many reasons to be proud. I mean, what you've done in your life and where you've been able to go. We'll come back and talk about that.
Yes. Thank you.